This is not a story about one woman, and it is not a story about morality, judgment, or sensationalism. This is a story about structure, the structure of human desire, the structure of repetition, and the quiet, often invisible forces that shape the way we live, love, and suffer. What you are about to hear is not someone else's life. It is a mirror, because the patterns we observe in extreme cases, addiction, unstable relationships, emotional dependency, are not anomalies. They are magnifications of something that exists in all of us. The illusion of choice. Most people believe they are making conscious decisions, but psychologically speaking, that belief is only partially true. In reality, much of human behavior operates through what we call habit loops. Stimulus, behavior, reward. Repeat that cycle often enough and behavior becomes automatic. You don't choose it anymore. It chooses you. This is why someone who feels lonely reaches for the same kind of relationship again. Why someone under stress returns to the same coping mechanism. Why a person trapped in cycles of emotional or sexual addiction often feels powerless to stop. From the outside, it looks like choice. From the inside, it feels like inevitability. Ancient insight meets modern psychology. Long before neuroscience, ancient traditions understood this phenomenon with striking precision. In the Tibetan text, Bardo Thodol, there is a powerful statement. Human beings do not get lost after death. They are already lost while living. This is not a religious warning. It is a psychological diagnosis. To be lost means to live without awareness of the forces driving your actions. To confuse repetition with freedom. To mistake desire for identity. The engine of repetition. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer described human beings as creatures of will. By will, he meant something very specific, an endless striving, a constant state of wanting. And he outlined a simple but devastating cycle. Desire fulfillment, brief satisfaction, new desire. This loop never ends. And here is the critical insight. Even when desire is satisfied, it does not liberate you. It resets you. So what happens over time? You escalate. You seek stronger stimulation, more intense experiences, more immediate rewards, until eventually what once satisfied you no longer does. And what once felt exciting begins to feel empty. The two paths. At this point, human life divides into two fundamentally different directions. Path 1, the pursuit of stimulation. This is the default path. It is fast. It is intense. It is culturally reinforced. You chase pleasure. You avoid discomfort. You consume experiences. And for a while, it works. But over time, three outcomes inevitably emerge. Exhaustion, emptiness, loss of direction. Path 2, the understanding of desire. This path is slower and much harder. It does not ask you to eliminate desire. That would be impossible. Instead, it asks you to observe it, to create distance between yourself and your impulses, to ask, what is driving this urge? What am I actually seeking beneath this behavior? This shift from reacting to observing is subtle, but it changes everything. The moment that changes everything. The French existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Man is condemned to be free." What he meant was this: even if you are shaped by your past, your environment, and your psychology, you are still responsible for your choices. And that responsibility begins with a single moment. The moment you ask a different question. Not, why is this happening to me? But, why do I keep choosing this? That question marks the beginning of awareness. And awareness is the point where repetition can break. Why change feels so rare. If awareness is so powerful, why don't people change more often? Because change is rarely triggered by comfort. It is triggered by disruption. Psychological research consistently shows that people tend to transform under conditions of loss, failure, illness, emotional collapse, profound loneliness. Pain interrupts the automatic cycle. It forces reflection. It creates what psychologists call a turning point. The three stages of transformation. When real change occurs, it usually follows a predictable structure. 1. Shock. Something breaks. A relationship ends. A pattern collapses. A crisis emerges. For the first time, the person stops. 2. Insight. Questions begin. Why do I keep repeating this? Why do I feel empty even when I get what I want? What am I actually chasing? This is the birth of self-awareness. 3. Choice. This is the hardest stage, because now you must decide. Return to the familiar pattern or step into the unknown. The brain is not your destiny. There is an important scientific principle here. Neuroplasticity. Your brain is not fixed. Your behavioral patterns are not permanent. Every repeated action strengthens a pathway, but new pathways can be formed, which means your past explains you, but it does not define you. Midlife collapse or awakening. As time passes, something else begins to happen. The strategy of stimulation starts to fail. What once felt exciting becomes dull. What once distracted you no longer works. And a new question emerges. What has my life actually meant? Psychologist Erik Erikson described this stage as a conflict between generativity versus stagnation. One path leads outward toward meaning, contribution, connection. The other leads inward toward regret, repetition, and emotional paralysis. The truth about emptiness. Here is the paradox most people misunderstand. Emptiness is not just a problem. It is a signal. It appears when illusion stops working, when stimulation can no longer mask the absence of meaning. And at that moment, something extraordinary becomes possible. Not pleasure, not distraction, but clarity, the question that defines your life. So ultimately, everything we've discussed leads to one question. What are you orienting your life toward? Stimulation or meaning? Because these two paths lead to radically different outcomes. One ends in repetition. The other leads to transformation. A final thought. The Tibetan text we mentioned earlier offers one final insight. A single moment of awareness can break countless cycles of repetition. Not effort, not willpower alone, but awareness. So let me leave you with this. What are you repeating right now without realizing it? And what would change if you truly saw it? If this perspective challenged the way you think about your own life, consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And if you want to explore the deeper structures of human behavior, desire, and transformation, subscribe and stay with this series. Because in the next lecture, we will go further. We will break down the three forces that shape every human life: environment, personality, and choice. And we will answer a question that may be even more uncomfortable than today's. Why do we keep choosing the same kind of people again and again? Thank you.